Hi everyone. So this is part 2 of me learning how to program with the help of ChatGPT. So if you haven't watched the first video yet, this is the second one, and I will quickly tell you what I do. So I'm basically learning how to program with the help of ChatGPT, and I do this in real life and raw, and you can sign up and you can basically listen to it and learn with me together. And what I will be doing is that I will try to create a full stack app, like a very simple one, because it's the first time I ever do this and I have no clue about programming languages. So I asked ChatGPT to help me doing it. And what I will be doing is a very simple version of the so-called tool Canny that you see here in the screen. And what it does is that you can input your own, let's say, feature requests, and then you can upvote them. And the reason why I choose this is that I thought, okay, it would be nice for my additional projects that I do, that you can basically use those projects, or how do you say this? You can give me ideas on what kind of projects I should tackle next, that you want to learn about and that you want to learn and find out how you can make these things yourself. So I will basically show you how it works and I will learn it and you can watch my learning. And then I will also do trainings and more detailed, let's say, analysis of how I do it and how you can do it as well as that I do it for you if you need help. But for now, it's all about me learning. And so this is a completely raw video, so there is no editing and so on. So there will be pauses, there will be breaks, there will be just thinking about for myself, there will be reading. So there will be various things of me getting this thing going, as I said, as a total beginner. So there will be mistakes, but I will try to get rid of those mistakes and just learn, and maybe you'll find value in that, and if not, then you don't. But the idea is that I share this because I often hear from people that they say, okay, I actually enjoy seeing how other people learn. I enjoy seeing and learning with them. And it kind of helps me to get a bit more into the details of how things work, despite just paying a lot of money for a course, which I don't really have time to. But in that sense, I can just get a grasp of what you're doing and how things actually look like in real life. And so that's the reason what I do and why I do it, that I share what I learn and not doing it by myself. So it will take a bit longer for myself, but at the same time, I'm trying to give you as much insights as possible. And the more I do these videos, I hope the more accurate and more relevant those insights might be for you. And with that, let's go back into details. As I said, if you haven't watched part 1, I would highly recommend you watching it, because what I do here, I won't start from the beginning. I will start from where I left. And for me also, this will be a bit of an experience again, because I also left yesterday with it. I said in the end of the video last time, the part 1, I will be back in 5 minutes, which was just not possible because I had to create a workshop in a different field. So I also work for customer success and how to work with clients and how to better understand clients, which I think is extremely important also when building products. But for now, this is really a learning experience. So let's dive in and let's see what happens. So now we can close Canny, or at least move it somewhere else. And so what I do is I have here my ChatGPT open. And in ChatGPT, you see this is here the arrow. So we have a lot more of ChatGPT that we already discussed, like discussions with it. But what I'm in here is currently setting up my app. And what I did is first using Replit. So we used Replit for just trying how it should look like. So this was something that the ChatGPT gave me. And then we had the card voting. So there were different cards and then you could upvote and downvote. Not perfect, but it kind of worked. But I want to do it not only with the front end, but also with the back end. So we installed Visual Studio Code and we did like here adding some Node.js, which I also installed, main.js, which apparently is a different JavaScript file. We added a JSON or 2 JSONs apparently, and something like Node modules, and we added some here code. And that's basically it. Don't ask me how the code works. I have not figured it out yet, but that's where we are currently standing. And I now scrolled back to this piece of ChatGPT that we officially started the first time when I said, okay, I want to do this with a backend. So basically what I said is, great, I want to be able to store the cards data into a data bank and then retrieve and update the information based on what the user types into the cards. Can you generate the right code for me and tell me how I can achieve that? So this was the official first answer ChatGPT gave before I completely dived into details. So to store and retrieve card data in a database and update information based on user input, you'll need to use a server-side backend along with the database system. For this purpose, I'll provide you with a simplified example using Node.js as the server, Express.js as the web framework, and SQLite as the database system. This example will demonstrate how to save and retrieve card data and update it based on user input. So that's what we figured out. So we have the Node.js, which we downloaded. We have the Express.js, where I'm still not 100% sure what it does, and the SQLite, which is a database. So we were able to do these step by step. So basically set up your environment. That's something we did. So make sure you have Node.js installed on your computer, have not download and install it from the official website. So that's what we did. Create a new project directory is also something we did. Initialize a Node.js project is also something that we did after I created this Node.js file, which you figured out how it works. Then run the following command to initialize a Code.js project and create a package JSON. So apparently that's creating this package JSON. So that's what we find in the Visual Studio Code here, the package JSON. And then install required packages, install Express SQLite. I think that's what we also did. Let's quickly check. We have to go down here. Let's see. Did we actually do this or not? I think we did that. Oh yeah, here we did it, right? Here you see that. So we installed them. And then created a server file, create a new JavaScript file, e.g. server.js in your project, write the server code. So this is something that we haven't done yet because we did write server code, but we wrote like a very short version of that. And for that reason, let's copy that code and let's put that in there. But what I see, I think, so let's see. So here we have the, excuse me. So here we have the server.js, but we also have this constant HTTP. So I'm not 100% sure if we need to keep that or not. So let's just quickly input this here. And now we put this here. So the constant port process whatsoever. Server is running on port. Interesting. Constant port. Okay, we have this in here. Oh no, we have a double. Let's see. But this constant, okay, maybe we have to just ask it because I really don't know. Okay, so this constant we put in. So we can say, let's ask that. So let's say, we open a new window in ChatGPT. I think that makes it easier because then we have like two different open and we don't have to jump back and forth. So let's do it that way. So we do the 3.5. I think that's enough for now. And then we can say, okay, I copy the code. I am currently creating a app for being able to create cards that you can create as a user and upvote as a user using a backend database. In another chat, you provided me with the following code for the node for the server.js, which I paste here in a second. Please let me know if I need to include only this code or if I need to include any other code from what you gave me beforehand for testing, which I also will include in here. So do I have to type into the server.js both code snippets, or is it enough to only use one of them? First for the cards use case, and now we do the copy paste here, and then we say next one is test equals, and then we put here this one constant port, right? Let's see if this is actually working, because I mean that's a lot of just. So it says, okay, it looks like you have provided two different code snippets. The first one is for creating a server that handles cards, while the second one is a basic Hello World server. If you're working on an app for creating cards with the ability to upvote and use a backend, you should use the first code snippet for the cards use case. The code sets up an Express.js server and connects to an SQLite database for managing cards. You would typically use the code for handling card creation, retrieval, and other related functionality. The second code snippet with the Hello World server is unrelated to your card's app functionality. You don't need to include it in your server file unless you have a specific use case for it in your application. So in summary, you should include only the first code snippet for the cards use case in your server. Okay, so I kind of thought about it, but yeah, you never know. So let's do that. And then let's say file, save. Okay, now go back. So now we wrote the server code. Great. And now we can run the server. So in your terminal, run the server using the following command. So node server.js. So that's what we will be doing. I learned that you put this in here. So in the terminal, so we say node server.js and press enter. So now what happens? Okay. Node events 497. Address already in use. Okay, we just put this all in here and say, let's see. No, that's not what we want. That's like the second piece. So we say now, okay, great. I inputted the code and get this as a result. So let's see, it says the error message you're encountering error and indicates that the port you're trying to use is already in use by another process on your system. This commonly happens when you attempt to start a Node.js server on a port that is already occupied. To resolve this issue, you have a few options. Find and stop the conflicting process. You can try to find the process that is currently using port 3000, stop it. On Unix-based systems, you can use to find the process. This command will list the process using port 3000. You can then terminate that process. Okay, use a different port. You can change the port that your Node.js server listens on in your code where you define the port variable, change it to a different port number, such as 4000. Make sure that the new port you choose is not already in use. Kill Node.js processes. In some cases, Node.js processes might not be terminated properly, causing the port to be locked. You can try killing all be cautious when using this command, as it will full forcefully determine all. Once you resolve the use port conflict, you should be able to start Okay, so we will just change it then to 4000. And I think the reason is because I actually indeed used it beforehand, the server.js. So let's just put the constant here to 4000. And then put file, save. And then we run the same thing again down here. And we say node server.js. Now let's see what's happening. Server's running on port 4000. Okay, seems to work. Easy. Okay, be cautious when using this. Okay, we are now going back. So the server will start and listen for requests on the test the API endpoints. You can now use API endpoints to interact with the database. To get all cards, okay, I have no clue how to do this. So now I say, in this one here above, you said that at step 8 of one of your answers that I should now test the API endpoints of to interact with the database. I have no clue what I am supposed to do. Please help me to tell me where I have to input the get and post thingies and how it works with the database. Because I mean, in the end, we created a database apparently, like this SQLite database, but there's nothing in it. So currently it's completely empty. So you see this is like huge. So basically we have to all slow down here. Okay, now, what does it say? Certainly. I'll walk you through how to test API endpoints that interact with the database using HTTP GET and POST requests. To simplify, I'll provide an example using Express.js, a popular Node.js framework, to create a simple RESTful API with 2 endpoints, one for retrieving data and another for adding data. I'll also show you how to use an SQL database for simplicity. So now we're getting into the grids. As said, I have no clue, right? Everything I do here is complete learning at the moment. Here are the steps. Set up your Node.js project. Make sure you have a Node.js installed. Create a folder project. Initialize your project with install required packages. That's all we already did. Create a database file. Create an SQL database file in your project folder. So I think this is what we already did. So, or not did, but we did something with another file. So we try this now, DataDB. So we go into our Visual Code and we do here more file. No, wait a second. We don't want something here. We want in here, we want a new file. And that is cards.db. We already have one. Interesting. DataDB. How did you call it? DataDB. So we just call it DataDB even though there is a cards.db. And DataDB looks exactly the same. Okay, whatever. We keep it that way as for now. Create an Express server. Create a JavaScript file, e.g. server.js, and set up your Express server with routes to handle get and post requests. Here's a simple example. I think that's what we already got. So let's check if this is actually db1, your table name and column name with the actual table and column name. So let's quickly see what we actually have in the server.js. So I think db all select from cards. So maybe that's the reason why this db actually already exists. Okay, let's quickly ask ChatGPT what it does. So for the moment, I have an existing database file called cards.db in my project with the following code. See below. Is that code enough to already have all the relevant code in the server.js, or do I need to add some additional code pieces from what you provided me above as code to include in the server.js file? Here's that code that I am currently using as part of the server.js file. So let's see what it says. Okay, so the code you provide in the server.js file looks like a good start for an Express.js application that interacts with an SQL database. It already includes the necessary code for creating the cards table if it doesn't exist, defining API endpoints to get and add cards, and listening on a specific port. Here's a summary of what your code does. It sets up an Express.js server. It creates and connects. Okay, so it creates the server. Interesting. So create and connect to the SQLite database. So basically, okay, so we don't need the data piece here because we already have the cards. So we can probably just delete that piece. Are you sure you want to move this because we have the cards already? Did I destroy something now? I don't think so. Cards DB. Create a table for cards if it doesn't exist. DB1, create table if not exists cards ID. Okay. So, okay, we have it sets up an Express.js server. It creates and connects to named cards DB and creates a cards table if it doesn't exist. It defines two API endpoints, get API keys, which is all cards from the database, and post adds a new card to the database. It uses middleware to pass JSON requests. It starts the server and listens on a specific port, either the one specified in the port environment variable or port 4000 if not specified. Assuming your cards DB file already contains the cards table with a specified schema, and you want to interact with this database using defined API endpoints, your code should work for basic CRUD operations related to cards. You can test the API endpoints to make sure they work as expected. If you encounter any issues or need to add more features, you can modify the code, but it seems like a good starting point for your project. Okay, to be honest, I have no clue what it all means, so we have to go into details here. So it says it sets up an Express.js server. Okay, thanks. I need more explanation here for what it all does, as I am a total beginner to programming. So first, can you explain the code to me that sets up the Express.js server and tell me what the code does and if I need to do any manipulations to it, or if that is just a quick code to connect to the Express.js. What actually is Express.js? Okay. So we go through these now one by one because I just don't know what they mean. And I need to better understand this because otherwise I think it gets really difficult for us to go into detail. So certainly I'll explain the code that sets up the Express.js server and provides some additional, oh God, that's a long thing. Okay, so basically it says, okay, certainly I'll explain. Okay, so basically explain everything, so that's fine. Now let's break it down. Express.js is a popular web framework for Node.js that simplifies the creation of web applications and APIs. It provides tools and conventions for building robust and scalable web services. Okay, I don't even know what a web framework is, but that's a different story. Creating the Express app, constant app like Express. So basically that's what we have over here. This line creates an instance of the Express application, which is the core of your web server. Okay. Port configuration, consistent ports. This line defines the port on which your server will listen for incoming requests. It checks if the port environment variable is set, useful for deployment in productive environments, and defaults to port 4000. Database setup. This line creates a connection to the SQLite database named CardsDB. SQLite is a lightweight relational database management system. Then creating a table. So this is this piece over here. This code blocks creates a table called cards in the database if it doesn't already exist. The table has 3 columns: ID, auto-incrementing title for card titles and content for card content, middleware. This line configures Express to use middleware that passes JSON requests. It's essential for handling JSON data sent and post requests. Okay. API endpoints. So where do we go here to add new cards? Okay, we have add post. Okay. So we have add post. Okay. Now let's go back here. App get and app post. Where do we have the app get? Oh, here we have the app get here. Endpoint to get all cards, and we have the app post endpoint to add new card. These sections define the API endpoints of your application. This endpoint responds to GET requests and retrieves all cards from the cards table in the database, and this endpoint responds, okay. Error handling. These blocks of code handle errors that may occur during database operations. If an error occurs, it logs the error message and sends an appropriate error response to the client. Starting the server. This line starts the Express server, making it listen for incoming requests on the specific port. It also logs a message to the console to indicate that the server is running. This code sets up basic Express.js server with two API endpoints for managing cards data in an SQLite database. You can test these endpoints by sending GET and POST requests to your server's URL. Okay, interesting. So we try this out. I have the feeling we're kind of reached an endpoint at this point, so I'm not 100% sure how to go further. Okay, so now it just says API cards. I mean, there is nothing in there. And then we can probably say, okay, API cards. Okay, so we just say, okay, thanks. One other question. What is a web framework? I sometimes feel like these are really dumb questions, to be honest. But as you said, I mean, as I said, it's like complete beginner, right? So we have to start early. We have to start here. So a web framework is a software framework designed to aid the development of web applications, including web services, resources, and web APIs. It provides a foundation for building web applications, streamlining common tasks, and promoting best practices. Here are some key characteristics and benefits of web frameworks: structure and organization. Web frameworks often enforce a specific structure and organization for your code. This makes it easier to maintain and scale your web application because it follows established patterns. Okay, abstraction of complexity. Frameworks abstracts away some of the lower level complexities of web development, such as handling HTTP requests and responses, managing databases, and routine URLs. This allows developers to focus more on the application's logic and less on the underlying technical details. Okay, common tools and libraries. Web frameworks typically come with a set of tools, libraries, and utilities that simplify tasks like form validation, authentication, and data manipulation. Security. Many web frameworks include security features and practices by default, helping developers guard against common web application vulnerabilities like cross-site scripting and SQL injection. Community and ecosystem. Web frameworks often have large and active communities, which means you can find documentation, tutorials, and third-party plugins or extensions to enhance your application. Rapid development. By providing pre-built components and functionality, web frameworks can significantly accelerate the development process. This is particularly useful for building prototypes and getting products to market faster. Scalability. Frameworks often encourage good software architecture practices, making it easier to scale your application as it grows to complexity and traffic. Okay, popular web frameworks include Express.js for Node.js, Ruby on Rails, Django for Python, Laravel for PHP, and Angular, React, and Vue for JavaScript on the client side. Okay, that's true. I actually heard of Express.js for Node.js. I heard of Django for Python. I heard of Laravel for PHP for websites, and Angular, React, or like not for websites, but especially for website plugins or like themes. And Angular, React, and Vue for JavaScript on the client side. So I heard about Angular, React, and Vue. So I heard these names already, but that's it. Okay, developers choose web frameworks based on their programming language preferences and the specific requirements. Okay, so it's basically, I guess, yeah, a streaming and making it easier to do these web developments. Okay, then we have this creating the Express app. So we have the database set up. So I think now we have to find out. I need to find out what JSON is. I still don't know what JSON is. What is JSON, by the way? Okay, so JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's a lightweight data interchange format that is easy for humans to read and write and easy for machines to parse and generate. JSON is often used for transmitting data between a server and a web application or between different parts of an application. Okay, here are some key characteristics. Data structure. JSON represents data in a structured format similar to how data is organized in programming languages. It uses a simple and concise syntax. Data is organized as key value pairs with key enclosed in double quotation marks and values following a column. JSON is designed to be easy for humans to read and write. Okay, here's an example. Okay, in this example, we have an object with various keys value pairs. Some values are strings, numbers, booleans, an arrow, and even another JSON object. JSON is widely used for data exchange between web servers and clients, making it a fundamental part of modern development. It's used in APIs to send and receive structured data, which can then be easily processed by the receiving application. JavaScript, Python, and many other programming languages have built-in support for working with JSON data, allowing developers to parse JSON, convert it into native data structures for further manipulation. Okay, so it's a format, if I understand this correct, to send data or exchange data between web servers and clients. Okay, so now that we have that, we probably just have to write it now and say, hey, okay, so now I inputted the code for my app, my web app, to be able to create feature cards as a user, and then as a user having the option to upvote or down to upvote the different cards. So now in the code above, you created what did you create? You created the Node.js server.js code for creating an Express app, port configuration, database setup in SQLite 3 with the name cards.db, created a table, created then middleware with JSON, API endpoints, and more. Now you also provided me with the front end code at one point in time before I asked to have it being handled by the backend and database, which was the following. See above. Can you please tell me the next steps, step by step, of how to write the frontline code, if necessary or if helpful, also via a web framework, and show me the code of can you please tell me the next steps in code, next steps, step by step of how to write the font line code, and show me the code of how to connect the back end and database with the front end so that the app is working properly. The code for the front end only was the following. Okay, now we have to go up. No, we don't have to go up because we have this in the weblet here. I think this was the weblet, so we just now do a whole copy paste of this one here and put this in there, and then I'm really excited to see if this thing is actually able to manage that, because this is like not only one thing, right? These are like several steps that it actually has to take into account. So excuse me, I had to just drink something. Okay, so it's okay, it's still running. Okay, now it's done. That's a long answer. So let's see if we kind of figure out how this works. So to integrate the front-end code with the back-end database, you'll need to modify the front-end code to interact with your Node.js server and SQLite database. Below, I'll provide a step-by-step guide on how to achieve this. Modify your front-end code, HTML and JavaScript. Update the front-end code to send HTTP requests to your Node.js server to create, retrieve, and vote on cards. You'll need to make asynchronous requests, typically using the Fetch API to communicate with your server. Here's a modified version of your front-end code that includes these changes. Okay, your existing HTML code. Okay, so it says basically we have to include the existing HTML code. So we do this. So we make a copy paste here. We go to Visual Studio Code. We don't have this yet, so we need an HTML, which is index.html. So we just call it index.html. Sorry, I have to open this again. So we call this index.html. And in here now we put this whole code. And now we have, let's see. So this is an HTML code. And it says, okay, style, head, body. I think style we could also move to a CSS file, but we leave it as it is here now. Body, and then we have the script. So you see here's the script piece. And it goes until here. So the rest is a script. So what we will be doing is that we will copy paste now this whole thing. Copy the code. And then we input the script. So we delete this piece here. Let's quickly check if this works. And we put the new script. So now, this is the script. Let's quickly check for the weblet around. Okay, this script is head, body. The script is not part of the body, so or not part of the body, but it's not like on the same level as the body. It's basically indented. So we need to check if we have to do this here as well. So now I think with the body, yeah, maybe we have to. I wonder if we can do this in one zip. Okay, I have no clue how to do this. So we just do this. I think there should be a better and a faster version. But I'm not sure, and I don't want to destroy, to be honest, this whole code now. So I just want to leave it as it is. Okay, this is way too long. We should have checked how it works, to be honest. But well, now we do this in a manual way. I hope I don't destroy any kind of, how to say this, any kind of like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Okay, so let's see if we can actually understand anything of the script. So it says async function fetch cards, so function to fetch existing cards from the server, constant response API cards, data, return data, okay, whatever. Function to add a new card to this on the server, so add card, constant response, method post, headers, body, title, and content. So this is new title. Okay, then if response status card added successfully, refresh the card list. Function to refresh the card list. Async function, okay. Cards for each card. Function to recreate a card element. Okay. Event listener for adding a new card. Initial card retrieval. Okay, whatsoever. No clue. But let's see. Okay, in this updated code, the fetch cards function sends a get request to the server to retrieve existing cards. Okay, the server is the server JS that we have. So, or like the, yeah, I guess. The add card function sends a post request to the server to add a new card. The refresh cards function fetches and displays all cards. The event listener, okay. Note, you need to replace the placeholders for card title and content with actual user input and dynamically generated data as needed. The question is if now I have to even, okay, but we need to check this. So maybe we ask this. Okay, so I inputted the adapted JavaScript into the HTML code as you suggested and changed it to the new one compared to the old one. I have some questions about it. First, this sends all the data to the server. What about the data bank? How do I, or is that automatically connected? And secondly, you write in step 1 that a node, what does this mean and how do I do that to, what does it say, to replace the placeholders for card title and content with actual user input or dynamically generated data as needed. Is this what you do in the second step, or is that something else? Okay, well, we can quickly see modify backend code. In your server.js file, you need to handle these new routes for creating, retrieving, and voting on cards. You'll also need to store and manage cards in your SQLite database. Below is a modified version of your server.js file. Okay, so we have the port 4000, we have the cards DB1. Okay, in this updated code, the votes column is added to the cards table in the database to keep track of votes. The API cards get endpoint retrieves card from the database, includes their vote counts. A new route needs to be added to handle card voting, which will update the vote count in the database. Front and back end interaction. When a user clicks add card, the front end sends a post request to the API cards endpoints to create a new card in the database. When the page loads or when a user interacts with cards, the front end sends gets, okay. Display vote count. You can update your front-end code to display the vote count for each card. You'll need to modify the card creation logic in the create card element function to include the vote count. With these changes, your web application should be able to create and display cards, allow users to upload and download, and synchronize the data with your Node.js. Remember that this is a simplified example. In a real-world application, you might want to implement user authentication, error handling, and more robust validation. Okay, so I inputted this, what I want. Great. It's good to hear that you've created the JavaScript into your HTML code. Okay, well, that's a tiny little bit of a step. Now let's address your questions. Database interaction. In the modified code, we focus on the front and backend interaction, but we haven't yet integrated direct database interaction into the front end JavaScript. The communication with the database is primarily handled on the server side Node.js. When a user adds a new card by clicking Add Card, the front end sets a request to the server and the server handles the database insertion. Okay, the front end sends a request to the server and the server handles the database insertion. When the page loads or when you retrieve cards, the server fetches the data from the database and sends it to the front end. The database interaction code is a new Node.js server. It's responsible for inserting new cards into the database and retrieving cards from the database. The database is connected to your server, so when you use SQL commands in your server code, db1, db_all, it operates on the connected database. Replacing placeholders with user input. In the front-end code, you'll see placeholders for card title and content like this. These lines are placeholders, meaning they display default values for newly created cards. To replace these placeholders with actual user-inputted dynamically generated data, you'll need to modify the JavaScript code. For example, when a user clicks the Add Card button, you can open a prompt or form to collect the user's input for the card title and content. You would then use the user's input to set the text content of the title and content elements instead of the hard-coded values. Here's a simplified example. Okay. In a real-world application, you might use HTML forms and input elements to collect user input, handle form submissions, and send data to the server for storage. The note about replacing placeholders is about customizing the card content based on user input or dynamically generated data to make your application interactive and user-friendly. Remember that this is just a basic sample and you can further enhance your application by implementing a more user-friendly input mechanism, handling user authentication, and adding validation for user input to ensure data integrity. Okay, it might get a bit complicated. So whatever, we now first modify our backend server. So we just copy the code and put this in here for the Node.js. Where is it? Oh, here's the server.js. So quickly check if this is also, server is running on. Okay, we just quickly do that. And then we say file, save. Okay. Replacing placeholders with user input. Okay, let's go into our JS. Where are you? Where are we? Main.js? No, index.html. Okay, function to create a card element. Okay, that's gonna be it's gonna be very interesting. And I just realized that I have to actually leave now. So this video will be stopping now, and then we will finish and go on where we stopped here. So this will be our next task. So part 3 of the video will then be about us finding out how we can add and adapt the, adapt here the code and how we can test this. So let's end the video. Thanks for joining in, and we will go on either later today or otherwise tomorrow.